Those of us who own a small business are self-reliant. We're driven by freedom, by choice, by ownership. Small business people are optimistic, the kind of optimism that's rooted in a great idea. We can create jobs, we can create wealth, we can make the world a better place.
Small Business 2000 with Hattie Bryant.
The founders of this country were small business owners. I am convinced that every adult American has an idea for a business. We take the risk believing that this idea will work. When you have your own business, you're free to act on those ideas. So we can't just do the ordinary, we have to do the extraordinary.
Small Business 2000 is made possible by support from the United States Postal Service, delivering the promise to America's 23 million small and growing businesses. And now the post office is on your desktop with PC postage. And growthmoney.com. There's more than one way to finance your growing business.
Hi, I'm Hattie Bryant. Want to grow your business? Stay right here. You're now going to meet a man who has taken his medical diagnostics company from 12 employees to 200 in just 6 years. Bruce Camber, our strategist to integrate business planning with new technologies and a small business owner since 1970, will be with us to help us cut through cyberspace and use it to grow our business. John Morgo, our sales and marketing advisor, is going to explain how to write a winning sales letter. If you've watched Small Business 2000 before, you know we're a how-to program. We teach how to start, how to run, and how to grow a business. If you're a one-person shop, or if you have dozens of employees, you'll get a good idea today. We teach, but not in a traditional sense. We believe the best way for you to learn is from someone who's been down the road a little bit ahead of you. And so each week in Masterclass, you'll meet a small business owner who is already succeeding, and you'll meet a person who's willing to tell you how they've done it. Bill Hagstrom is not like anyone I've ever met. He left a huge healthcare organization to join a small sinking ship. Come now to Oklahoma City and meet a man on mission. Urocor offers its customers a comprehensive range of services for detecting, diagnosing, and managing the clinical challenges of bladder, prostate, and other complex urologic diseases. Its customers are urologists and managed care organizations.
Our goal is to serve our physician base, which are urologists, in their quest to deliver better care to their patients. And our business model is based on having the best capabilities in place to detect disease, to provide the best diagnosis, to provide prognosis on what might be that patient's outcome, to look at the best staging capabilities or monitoring capabilities. Now, many of these capabilities are available in the marketplace today, but it's how do you assemble them in a way that adds the most value and provides the highest level of quality.
Urologists send samples to the Oklahoma City-based laboratory, and they receive the most comprehensive analysis available today.
This is a urine sample that is derived from a 68-year-old male. These cells are characteristic of a tumor that's the most common tumor in bladder, transitional cell carcinoma or urothelial cell carcinoma.
Dr. Jerry O'Dowd is a pathologist. Urocor convinced him to leave his private practice in Washington, D.C. to become medical director of the company.
A very, very high percentage of men, once they get over the age of 50 and 60, have a latent or trace form of prostate cancer. And we knew that with the demographic shift in the male population, that this relatively high prevalence of prostate cancer would become a major socioeconomic and medical, diagnostic problem.
The business was actually founded on the basis of a technology that was transferred out of the University of Oklahoma, and it was envisioned that this technology could be the technology to be able to detect early stages of a wide range of cancers. And in their enthusiasm over what type of impact that could have, I think they might have missed some of the fundamentals along the way. And perhaps it could be said that all of the business skills and the finance skills and what kind of return could be available to investors based on the science or technology was not as well addressed as it might have been.
With just over 200 employees and about $25 million in sales, Urocor is defining disease management in the major urological disease categories. Because last year, $1 out of every $6 was spent on health care, and with costs continuing to increase, more organizations are looking to total disease management for cost containment. The right idea at the right time will fail without the right leadership.
How did they decide to hire you?
They brought on board a search firm out of New York City, and as I was at a point in my career where I wanted to move into an early stage company environment and had most recently served in about $1 billion division of an $8 billion company, I was strongly looking for an opportunity to build a business from scratch. That's what I wanted to do. I mean, I yearned for that risk because there's a certain type of individual that's highly motivated by challenge, and degree of difficulty actually provides that next higher level of motivation. I had never done product development before, or I'd never created a department before, I'd never done a turnaround before, raised money before. So these are all brand new first-time experiences. So there may be a mindset that one can develop as it relates to how to approach a situation that you have no experience in, frame it out productively, look for resources, and then an effective way to model your options and alternatives and come to resolution on it.
What do you think you learned from big business that you
Right.
never want to see happen at Urocor?
Well, I learned several things along the way. On the positive side, I learned very strongly what analytical techniques one needs to be advancing within the business, how to look at strategic dimensions, how to look at the vision or framing out a business. But I think what's real important is to look at what individuals can successfully transition into a smaller business or an early stage enterprise. And it's got to be an individual that has a very strong bias for action, because in a small business, lack of progress moving forward is exceedingly apparent as a starting point. Second is to be a person that isn't used to a lot of staff or hasn't gotten so far removed from the actual work that they can't get things done by themselves. In my last position within a large company, I had a staff of 80 people. When I arrived here, the whole company was 12 people. So you've got to be able to do things that you have to be not so far removed from the work that you can't do it yourself.
You have your own laptop or PC? You can
Yes.
can you write your own memos?
Yep, absolutely. You have to be quite self-sufficient. I think a lot of people in larger enterprises too were a part of the success of the organization. They moved along with the organization, but as it relates to their ability to make their own individual contribution on a standalone basis, there really aren't a lot of those people that have a level of creativity and continuous drive and motivation to, in the face of obstacles, get up and keep doing it again and again until they prevail. They may have, again, been just so much a part of the system as opposed to driving it further forward themselves. I think another thing that's real important in transitioning from large companies is that you're trained as a general manager so much to focus on the P&L as opposed to having extensive background or experience typically with cash flow and balance sheet. And in an early stage enterprise, cash really is everything. So you start with the capital structure in cash, and you look at how you're consuming cash along the way. And a lot of people don't have experience in raising money. And certainly I underestimated that role along the way. Perhaps in the first few years I spent up to 30 or 40% of my time in capital formation. Mm-hmm. When push comes to shove, the most important thing to the investment community is going to be the management team and the resources that you put into place. I think most venture capital funds believe that management can overcome weaknesses sometimes or flaws in technology, versus if you've got a strong technology but you've got very limited or flawed management, that business probably isn't going to go as far.
After successfully raising venture funds, it was decided that the next step would be an initial public offering. Socrates Chambakos, the chief financial officer, explains the process.
Once you filed the registration statement, that was the first major step in the process, which is a filing with the Securities and Exchange Commission that describes the financial history and the business of the company, lays out who the investors are, who the management is, everything you ever wanted to know about the company, in language that the SEC can understand in the hopes that investors would understand it. Then you prepare what's called a roadshow, which is a presentation in less than 30 minutes for investors, because you will go around, if you've selected underwriters, they will arrange visits with institutional investors and various money funds and so forth to allow you to explain your story and why you think the company will increase in value over time, to help these people decide whether or not they want to buy your stock. That's called a roadshow, because in our case we visited cities over 9 days and made 54 one-on-one meetings. We had lunches, we had breakfasts, we had conference calls with Sweden and the UK and people we couldn't actually meet face to face to tell the story.
So, Sock, what advice would you give a small business owner who truly believes they're sitting on a great idea that deserves public funds?
Well, part of it would be a matter of starting sooner rather than running faster. We started with trying to refine and tell our story several years earlier. We started talking to investment bankers that were very active in our industry, and there are groups that are more active in certain industries than others, so that they would understand our story. They would have a history with us over time, so they could say, these people did what they said they were going to do. We've known them for several years, and your credibility is increased. We did other things too. Of course, you have to have a business plan that lays out the assumptions and the financial projections for the company and why you think you will continue to increase in value. We also did things like looking at the capitalization of the company. We adjusted the number of shares so that the number would be in a reasonable range for an IPO. We changed some of the terms of some of the other agreements that existed in planning for that. And very importantly, well, we knew we had very top shelf accountants, and we'd been audited for several years. That's really important. It's hard to go back, and it's very expensive to go back and audit 3 years worth of statements when you're starting cold. We had Arthur Anderson doing that. We had Fulbright and Jaworski as our legal counsel for several years, so they knew the company. That raises the comfort level of the underwriters. We also adjusted the composition of our board of directors, which had been all venture capitalists plus Bill 2 years ago, and now we actually have 2 venture capitalists, 4 independent directors, and Bill Hagstrom is the chairman. So a lot of it is preparation that can need a couple years of lead time to get ready, but then when you're ready, I think we were able to move very quickly and do a first-class offering in a very good market.
We're pretty big believers in gaining as much information as possible on what's happening in our marketplace or what's happening at large. So I typically start the day out with 2 or 3 fact services. We'll go onto the internet and look for a number of news stories from a wide variety of sources, and then typically I'll read somewhere between 4 and 6 newspapers a day.
Do you think it is a good use of a small business owner's time to read 5 or 6 newspapers and subscribe to fax services and internet?
Absolutely. It allows you to grow your business, to think big, as well as to look at other models or other examples. I've always been a big believer in looking outside of one's industry even for what ideas thinking out of the box can bring to the equation. So by looking at how other companies have successfully addressed issues or thinking in terms of this new technology or this new approach, you can put it in the context of how it might benefit your business.
When Bill went to Urocor, he said he had never created a product, never created a department, never done a turnaround, never raised money, never dealt with corporate law, never done a lot of things. Obviously, learning is one of the best things Bill does. He says when you want to approach a situation you've never experienced before, you need a certain mindset. Frame up the problem, look for resources, develop a model, and then find a solution. He doesn't have an MBA, but he approaches most situations, new situations, with a book, and he believes that there's a practical application to most theory that he finds in business literature. He doesn't just read books either. He reads 5 to 6 newspapers a day, 2 fax services, and he goes to the internet at least twice a day for news updates. Bill is raising the bar. Learning must be, for all of us, job one. Here are some of the books Bill loves. How to Turn Around a Troubled Company by John Whitney, The Art of the Long View by Peter Schwartz, and Competitive Advantage by Michael Porter. Bruce Camber shows us that the internet can help us understand more about venture capital and initial public offerings.
Bill Hagstrom's not only surfing the internet, he's on the internet, and he understands its power. In fact, if you want to follow in Bill's footsteps, you might take a look at some of the search engines that are on the internet. If you enter venture capital, enter it as venture plus capital, it'll give you all the references on the internet to venture capital. If you want to go and look at one page that we have on critical ratios to initial public offerings, there you can click on a few of the references that we have particularly thought were helpful. If you've been listening to Bill Hagstrom, think about what he does every day. Gets on the net, reads so many books. You can do it too. Don't wait. If you've been thinking about raising capital or taking a company public, there's plenty of information, plenty of resources for you to drill on down, get the information you need, and make it happen.
If you want to see this show or others in our series again, come to SB2000.com. TV when you want it. You can watch the whole show on streaming video, read the full transcripts, or go to the study guide, a full resource for anyone interested in starting or growing a business. Mark Dimitrov wears many hats, including managing the sales and customer service divisions. He explains how he has built a sales team from the ground up.
That is to say that unlike the typical approach of looking at an individual's demographic qualifications, what have they done in the past, how successful were they selling this or selling that, or do they come from a medical background, certainly we look at that, but that's not how we make our hiring decisions. We really look at more the qualitative aspects of the individual. And so, first of all, do they have the intelligence and motivation to do the job is kind of just a standard you'd have to meet. But then once you've met that benchmark, what is their kind of history of success, regardless of what field it's been in? Because our thought is that if you can get a successful individual into the organization, if we can create an environment that'll help them maintain that success, then it'll be a win-win type of situation.
So do you think that small business owners sometimes don't go up against the competition because they're afraid the big guys are just going to shut them out?
Yeah, I think that's definitely a possibility. I think when we were back 5 or 6 years ago and just getting started and nobody knew about Urocor. In fact, we didn't even have the name Urocor at the time. It was the feeling though that we had that because again we specialized in an area and because we had pathologists that were specialized in that urology field, that we had the confidence that we could deliver a product that was just second to none. And so going in against whomever, the big academic centers, the big national labs, wasn't even a thought for our reps. They just knew that they had that confidence and capability behind them and delivered a product. And then once you do that, I think that the word spreads.
In addition to field salespeople, Mark uses direct mail targeted to the urologists who are not yet his customers. John Wargo tells us how to write a great marketing letter.
You want the salutation to be relevant. Now, for example, what you don't want to say is, "Dear Miss Occupante," okay? As one of our valued customers.
Yeah, baloney.
Okay, yeah, right. I mean,
Right.
you're sending it
I'm
to
sure they
current
know.
occupant, okay? And you write back and say, "Mr. Current Occupant doesn't live here anymore."
But is there a time when occupant is okay?
Occupant is fine when it's the right salutation. And the right salutation means that the occupant of this address is probably interested in this offer. It isn't personalized.
I'm really glad to hear you say that because I do a lot of direct mail to the programmers of public television. And I have been criticized by non-professionals for not saying their name. But here's why I like Dear Programmer. They pride themselves in that title.
They know that that is not a personal direct letter directed at them individually. They know that that is a letter directed to all programmers. I believe that's appropriate. The salutation needs to be appropriate with the intention of the letter.
Okay.
If it's individual and personalized, the salutation should be individual and personalized. If it's a broadcast message, then it should say that, because then the individual knows what you're communicating to them. Consumers are smart. Don't trick them, don't underestimate them, and don't try to personalize what isn't personalized, because they're going to catch it. The reading habits of the American consumer, particularly with the mail, are deeply ingrained. What they do is they read the mail every day, at the same time, at the same place. And if you watch what they do and you think about your own habits, they sit there and they sort through it. So they sort through what they want to read, they open, they read, they look at. When they open, they read, they look at it, they like the offer, they set it aside for later reading, or they act upon it. You know, a lot of people say, well, they get this advertising mail and they just throw it away. That's not true. You know what people throw away? What isn't relevant to them and what doesn't make sense to them. They keep what makes sense. So if you tell them, here's what it is, and if it makes sense to them, they'll read it.
Keep
you gotta
reading.
tell them early, because they aren't going to suffer through a whole letter to find out what you're talking about. You don't have to tell them everything you know about your business. You don't have to send pictures of your family vacation. Tell them the offer, put it up there, put it in a format that they could read it, they could understand it, and they can see what it's going to cost them. And you can get better results. Test, test, test. Send one out and see what happens. The interesting thing about direct mail is none of us are experts for every individual company. But here's what we could tell you. Test this way, test that way. Test one variable at a time. Test one point size. Test another. And what draws is what works. And that's what makes you the direct mail expert, not somebody else. The other thing that is important in all these letters is to put a PS. Everybody reads a PS. Don't make the PS an afterthought. Make the PS a call to action. Because while you're saying something up front, you make your offer, you sign it because you're going to stand behind it, and then PS, tell them again, order now, act now, come in to see me next week. PS is always read, and it's a reinforcer. My recommendation is on every letter you send out, every direct mail letter, put a PS in it. But make sure the PS is a call to action.
If you want to find out more about writing a winning sales letter, look in your library for Entrepreneurial Edge magazine or go to their website, www.edgeonline.com. Urocor does many things right, but one of the things that impressed me so much is their attention to detail when it comes to dealing with their customers. In fact, their customers are urologists, physicians, very busy people. What Urocor is doing is providing a return box with postage-paid label on that box. They show the physician exactly how to send the materials to Urocor. This reduces all the guesswork, all the hassle. It saves time. What are you doing to help your customers save time and reduce hassle? This is a good idea. Another example of improved customer service is a result of technology. This small company invests heavily in technology, including these Xerox 4700 color document printers, which allow Urocor to give the urologist a colorful and detailed report. Rather than relying on straight text to describe its findings, Urocor offers a graphic format utilizing charts, photographs, and drawings to better illustrate the findings, and these graphic elements are often best presented in color.
Somebody said to me early on that life isn't a dress rehearsal. You really have one opportunity to make your own path or to create your own destiny. Fundamentally, what I wanted were 3 different chapters in my career, and the first chapter was the learn phase, and there working for 3 large multinational healthcare companies provided the basis to be able to ultimately run a company. So that was phase 1, learn. Phase 2 was earn, and that is if you could be in an entrepreneurial environment where if the business ultimately succeeded, there were monetary rewards in addition to intellectual rewards along the way, and that type of recognition. Then phase 3 would be return, which is how does one return to society by way of activities they're involved in, or perhaps they pursue government service or a teaching profession or whatever the case may be. But early on, I wanted there to be these three phases of learn, earn, return.
What would the world be like if we all had the philosophy, learn, earn, return? No doubt, the world would be a better place.
It's more than just about dollars and cents. It's about passion. It's about what you love doing day in and day out. And having the opportunity to be involved in creating a business like this, see it achieve a certain level of commercial success is important, yes, but even more important is what we do day in and day out to affect patients, to affect their well-being, and to affect their ability to live a healthy, productive life.
Come back next week to meet Darby McQuaid in Santa Fe. If you can't find it at the Jackalope, you don't need it. Folk art by the truckload.
Small Business 2000 is made possible by support from the United States Postal Service, delivering the promise to America's 23 million small and growing businesses. And now the post office is on your desktop with PC postage. And growthmoney.com. There's more than one way to finance your growing business.
At SB2000.com, you'll find more about this program, steps to starting and growing a business, and through streaming video, you can even watch this show on the internet. SB2000.com. You have to feel if you don't do this, your life will not be complete. Learn today, earn tomorrow.